DTC Why Marketing Heroes Roundtable podcast. We've got a fantastic group assembled, and let's get to it. So, how's everybody been?
Good.
Everyone's doing well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the podcast. We're done. We're out.
That's like a loaded question.
That's it. Yeah. Well, Sharon's not on unless she's coming on right now. Oh, here she is. So when Sharon's camera comes up, she's got some amazing news that I'd love to share with y'all. Yeah, it's been an interesting month, that's for sure. Lots of things happening in a short month. Lots of Valentine's Day activities and whatnot. But let's kind of go around the table. So Scott, I see you first there. So what's been happening big for you this month in terms of things that you've been seeing?
As far as like
email marketing,
anything?
Absolutely. Any changes, any updates?
Not really any major changes or updates. Still like there has been some conversation. We're going to touch upon this a little bit later when it comes to using AI generated content. So really kind of watching what the big mailbox providers are going to be doing in relation to that. Google's still trying to get their AI tool out there. And then of course, a lot of people are using ChatGPT and other AI tools to generate content. And it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts deliverability. Nothing real definitive on that just yet. Oh, you're muted.
Can't hear
you. There we go. That's something obviously we're going to need to deal with, right? As marketers, is how does that come into play? So that's going to be exciting. Jade, how about you? What's going on in the world of community and having people being seen, heard, and loved? I've been using that all month now. I love it.
Ooh, yeah, right. I finished preparing the free training for you guys. So that should be
so excited,
loaded and distributed. And basically what it is it's a walkthrough of my personal framework of what it takes to design a successful community with strategy and intention. So it helps you pick out what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, so that you walk in feeling confident.
That's what we've been looking forward to for a while. So it's amazing. The idea of having like intentional community is such an important thing. And so really excited to see what that brings. Okay, George, you're next up on the list. What's been happening in the world of memberships, content, and so on?
Well, a lot of the same. It's all important that you keep your content current, interesting, exciting. Stay away from too much salesmanship in your messaging, and cover topics that you think people are going to want, as opposed to trying to sell them all the time.
Absolutely. Okay, and Mr. Paul, what's going on with you, buddy? How's been a long time no see? Have you got those analytics reports figured out and being able to log in, or is it just our situation?
I think it might be our situation, but talking about analytics, and I believe Sharon should hopefully have some more insight into this, but it's been really interesting to see, because I'm getting more familiar with Google Analytics 4 and looking at the reporting and how still the fundamentals of the UTMs, like every link you should have anywhere, you should be able to track it down to the link. Even if you have 4 links in one email, you should be able to see which of these links is getting people hyped. And the reporting is still, again, it's just how good do you see the data?
Right.
And Jade and I had some fun Google Analytics for experiences, and we learned a great deal. And maybe we'll talk about it if it's relevant, but that's perfect. It's common if you're still using Universal Analytics. And
to be clear, that's
June.
Yeah, it's June, but that's when people say GA4, right? Like that's the thing.
Everybody got to be using GA4. Hey, remember when television stopped doing the analog out of the airwaves and it was digital? and you had to buy like, grandmother, the like little $20 box that took the digital and threw it to her zenith or whatever. Like that's basically kind of what we're looking at. And then in 5 years from now, we're going to be like, hey, remember Google Analytics, Universal Analytics?
Exactly. Perfect. And Sharon, let's. Oh, who's that?
Sorry.
What's going on?
I was having connection issues, so
Okay, but there's some loud screaming going on.
yes, I can't
Who's
help
that?
it. I'm in a like clubhouse kind of thing because it's like the only place I can find around here to sit versus sitting in my
Okay.
car. So
Got
my
it.
apologies.
Okay, cool.
I'll mute when
No,
I'm
no,
not
no.
talking.
Okay, so we're just going through what's happening. So Sharon, I think Paul, can you give us a kind of a quick little drum roll because we got some amazing news here? Can you tap on your mic or something and give us a drum roll? Perfect. I totally put you on the spot because for those of you who don't know, Paul is a professional drummer as well. So Sharon, you have some amazing news to share with us about something that happened last week. Would you mind sharing, please?
Yes. So last Friday, I went to LA for the Google Awards, and I was given the honor of winning the Google Global Business Educator or Trainer of the Year award. So, yeah.
So woohoo, whoop, whoop, way to go, Sharon. So when we talk about heroes, you don't get much better than the Global Trainer of the Year, Corporate Trainer, Business Trainer of the Year. So we've got the best of the best here. So we are continuously basking in the glory of greatness. So congratulations, Sharon. I know that must have been a whirlwind. You sent me some photos. So they did the limo, they got to rent you the jewels and the gown and all that kind of stuff, right? Like you did the whole
Yeah,
thing.
I ended up buying my own gown, but they would have rented me one. But yeah, I ended up finding one that when I was out shopping with my girlfriends that just screamed Sharon. So, but yeah, I mean, it was
There you go.
a
Perfect.
whirlwind of definite feeling of gratitude of where God
And
has put me in my
what does
life.
it mean? Absolutely, it's amazing. And so, what does that mean to have won that award? And where does that kind of sit you in the overall Google ecosystem and so on? Where are you and who are you when it comes to that?
Well, it's the 5th highest award Google gives out company-wide to an outside individual. And it is
Fantastic.
pretty much one of the highest awards you can win in their business division.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on that. We are looking forward to all the great training and information. We'll be working and recording some stuff up this Thursday of this award-winning training quality. So totally stoked about that. So so thanks for joining us. Thanks for figuring out how to get online and be present today. Looks like you and I both had some technical issues, but that's okay. We're making it happen. Okay, so so the agenda really started off with kind of a discussion. Oh, I got to make myself big here. Hold on, let's do this. So the conversation, first of all, let me apologize for the crackly mic. I found out that somebody actually dropped the box that all my gear sits in. So that's what's happened. I think I've got a damaged microphone. So we'll make do. I apologize. I'll mute myself when I'm not talking. So the discussion was really now we're in the end of Q3, so the third month, March. And so we followed up with a January, which is really slow. People just weren't interested in wine or anything like that. February was, opportunity for re-engagement around Valentine's Day and so on. And now as we move into March, what I'm hearing back from a lot of the wineries is some staff changes, some people coming on board, some new training is required for those individuals to kind of get up to speed. New DTC staff, new social media staff, and so on. So there's a lot of issues around continuing that momentum that was started possibly in the fall, in the winter time, and then kind of re-engaging it. So I'm going to, Scott, I'm going to throw to you first, okay? Because I want to talk about engagement of emails, and I want to talk specifically around how not emailing your contacts through January and February, and then starting to quote unquote blast the community now potentially 2 or 3 months later into March. What impact does that have both from a reputational perspective, and so on. And then I'm going to take this conversation over to you, Paul, to talk social, and then we'll finish up Sharon in the Google side of it. Okay, so that's kind of how we'll run through this. So, Scott, let me throw that over to you. And how does that impact us?
Yeah, so really it kind of impacts on two different fronts. One is when you have radio silence with your audience, and they don't hear from you for any period of time, they tend to forget about you. And so then when you just like all of a sudden show up in their inbox, they're like, oh, who is this person? They may not remember, that they have done business with you whenever that was. And so they're not going to be as likely to look at your email messages if they do show up in the inbox. And they're probably, not going to be as inclined to engage with them. So again, I really go back to that your list is your relationship. So you really want to be having and building a continual relationship with the people that you're emailing. And, you want to make sure that you're having those regular communications so that whenever you do communicate with them, that they want to listen, that they want to engage, that they want to, hear what you have to say. From a delivery standpoint, though, if you stop emailing, the Christmas holidays over with, and you're like, hey, I just need a break. Nobody's interested in buying wine. So we're not going to email, for a couple of months. From a delivery standpoint, the mailbox providers, they look at that as like, you haven't sent anything for a period of time. So the engagement score that you might have had that was a high positive score, it's now dropped drastically. And depending on which mailbox provider that you're looking at, Microsoft being the most draconian, they look at engagement on a 14 rolling day period. So if you haven't emailed somebody for 60 days, guess what? Your engagement score is the big fat 0 for that list. Now, go back to school. So you have an A or a B average in a class, and then all of a sudden you get a couple Fs. How hard was it to get your grade back up to a B or an A? Really, really difficult, right? Same way with your email engagement score. If you drop to a 0, getting that back up to anything that's acceptable for the mailbox providers is going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to be much more difficult than if you had maintained that all along. So it can really have a negative effect. So that's why you at least, at minimum, even in slow seasons, email once a month if you need to drop back on frequency a little bit. But if you can, stay at a weekly engagement, weekly mailing rate with your list.
That's a really good point. And I think the discussion that I'm seeing right now is, hey, that's great, but we laid off our social media team during the holidays or during this cold period, and so how do we do that? So one of the things that you can do is you can pre-program these emails to go out in the future, right? That's the purpose of automation, right? And that's the background that we all come from. The other thing is, what am I going to talk about during those conversations? So I'm going to encourage everyone to go back to the conversation we had with Jade last month in the community side and look at how you can use some of the community points in those discussions that we had to potentially create some content for that. Okay, so great feedback there. Paul, from a social media perspective and looking at both advertising and setting up your accounts, but also managing the algorithms to make sure that you stay current when people were when we're launching the algorithms. I'm stuck on that word today. How does disappearing for a couple months impact starting up new campaigns?
It's a great question. A couple parts in there. So just like with email, and I loved your analogy, Scott, about if you're doing great and then you get a bunch of apps, like that's really hard to bring it up. Socials, in my opinion, socials the same way, and it's even less forgiving. You might have a week long where people are considered, really actively engaging with your stuff. So for advertising, at least with social, it's easy to stay top of mind and just, have a couple of boosts here and there just to keep showing up. The trick there, though, is, okay, well, what are you posting in the first place? And so getting around to what are we talking about? I was reminded of these email nurtures that I'll do, which is where you reach out around seasonal things or like a cleaning company writing emails to just remind you that we're here and book us to clean your house. And in the summer, we'll send an email that's like, here's how to clean a trash can. Clean your trash can every 6 months. So you can do the exact same thing with wine as far as your social and your email. And I guess high tides lifts all boats. So if you're sending an email about, let's do a little wine education in the summer months on the lighter wines, the white wines, the sweeter ones, we can also have the exact same thing going on social. And if anything, recycling the big meaty bits on email can be recycled into short little snippets for social.
I think from a content perspective, and maybe George, we'll come back to you on that one too. But I think there's a tie into the Google. But Scott, Paul, that's a really good idea of recycling and regurgitating some of the snippets out of those larger emails or blog posts.
Absolutely.
And using those. But again, continuously staying on top of that. And I'll just say this is that you can program. Paul, do you have any idea how far into the future you can program posts to go out?
I believe
I'm putting you on the spot
we
there,
have 75 days. I think it's like a month and a half. Because I remember trying to book a bunch of my band at the time was going on tour in like October, and it was like the beginning of September. I'm like, I'm just going to write all these posts and schedule them now. And I couldn't schedule the last like week's worth because it just happened to be like 75 days out or something like that. If you're developing maybe a monthly cadence, which for content is probably about all you need, because it's a consumer product. It's not like you're this B2B software company that's all sorts of crazy. It's wine. So, hey, this month we're going to be talking about whatever. Next month we're going to talk about whatever. And then maybe even this is where themes and stuff are helpful too. Hey, this quarter's theme is, again, light white wines because it's spring. And then maybe let's do one special wine spritzer every month because I'm spitballing entirely. But it can be as simple as that. It literally can be as simple as that, staying top of mind and going from there.
Perfect. Okay, so Sharon, then spinning off of what Paul just brought forward is how does this play out into the Google and specific into the Google? Geez, it's like into the Facebook. How does that?
Do you have the AOL discs, Mark? Still, you still cashing in your America Online minutes off those little?
I do. Yes, I still have the AOL discs. Yeah.
On the Google.
So Sharon, how does that play into the new changes with the business profile page and all of the elements that are there? So give us some of this award-winning training and kind of what happens if we're not posting for a couple months? What does that do to our Google rankings?
Well, so here's kind of what I'll tell you in just the overall knowledge of Google. Google basically, every time you touch your website or your Google Business Profile panel, 1 week later, they look at it. They'll come back another week, and if you haven't done anything new, they're going to wait 2 weeks. And then after that, they wait a month. If you still haven't touched anything, they're going to come back in like 6 months. And if you still haven't done anything at that point, their logic is, if you don't care about your business, why should we? So the lack of posting and touching, and updating items, especially on your Google Business Profile panel, which I will tell you now has a higher SEO ranking than your website. So if you're not paying attention to it, as of the changes February 20th, it's hurting you even more than it has before. But the other thing Google wants to see is consistency. So we always tell people, like, once you start posting, there's no stopping. And it's really no different than what it is on any social site. I mean, once you start, there's no stopping. If you stop and you break that, it does affect your ranking. And it is going to affect your ranking. And then when you start back up, it takes that 30, 60, 90 days of, I guess I'd say, confidence building to get your brand to start pulling back up again in a higher ranking way. So, I mean, you have to keep your brand out there constantly and consistently with new information in front of Google. It's a requirement. It's not an option.
So I heard a couple of things there. And kind of parallel to what Scott said and parallel to what Paul said is that there are timelines that you have within here. I'm going to make myself a little bit larger here just to pull that up. So there's timelines that you have to understand and follow, right? So in email, each of the big three email providers have their own algorithmic timeline from engagement. So if you're not emailing, like Scott had said, 30, 60, 90 days, then that's problematic. In the social side, again, we have issues around that. It's a much tighter timeline. And the key thing there with Google's method is if you don't post, they come back and check next week, then 2 weeks, then a month, then 6 months. So basically, if you were absent from posting activities on Google from January and February, that's 2 months. And anything that you're doing today, it's not going to catch up for 6 months. So Sharon, I recall something in one of our conversations that there is a way to get them to re-engage. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is what Google's wanting a couple things with their algorithm changes that happened back last fall. They're wanting to understand that you really know the client that you're going after and that you've done some research in Google to understand how those people are getting through Google's AI to get to you, because they're scoring you now on whether they feel the content you put out there on your Google Business Profile panel, on your posts, and absolutely on your website allows Google to understand who you're actually trying to market. So if Google can't go on your site and understand who your target market is, and they also, go through their process of reverse engineering, and they don't think that you understand how to talk to your own, target base, that's a problem now.
Yep.
And so
Yep,
in the
for sure.
past, we've spent so much time just talking to talk and to educate. But if we don't know that we're talking and educating on the things that people have an interest in your market, it is going to start having an impact on your business and the way that Google ranks your brand. And right now it's when I say brand, I don't mean like I'm this winery. Like your brand is going to get some knowledge just because it is a brand. And I think, Mark, when you watch my first masterclass teaching from last Thursday, you'll understand kind of a lot more about it because we talked specifically. Brand, when Google talks about brand, they talk about brand being your product. Does your brand, does your products, do you have a market that you're going after for every product that you have? Have you made that product stand out in some way that product now resonates with your target audience? Same way with a service that they would provide. So like if it's a wedding venue, are you out there talking as an educator in a way that people are needing to be educated? Are you talking in a way that basically, you're adding Q&A and you're out there, putting that Q&A out there to get engagement to people? So, they want to know that there's a closed loop into your building or into your phone or whatever that looks like for you in every interaction that you have with a client. Are you giving them, a means to encourage engagement?
So that's fascinating because and I'm going to audible here. I'm going to change things. And Jade, I want to bring you into this conversation here a little bit because it really speaks to the conversation around what we had 2 weeks ago around this idea of it's not about know, like, and trust. It's about, what's the words? Oh, you're muted.
About being heard and loved, and it's not like one or the other.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
Yeah. So I always say that the goal of a business in any phase, whether you're trying to attract or capture or maintain or fulfill whatever, is to make them feel seen, heard, and loved. And I say that in contrast to what businesses and marketers often say is the know, like, trust factor, but they're the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin. Know, like, and trust is what I want. I, as the business owner, I want you to know me. I want you to like me. I want you to trust me. But nothing we should ever do should be an I, ever. And this is for our content. This is for our Google, our email marketing, all of this. It is not about you. My favorite marketing quote, I've probably said this 100 times in front of you, and I'll say it again. You are not in the solutions business. You're in the problems understanding business. Okay. Flip the script. It's not about you. It's about them. So seen, heard, and loved is what they want. Know, like, and trust is what we want. So when it comes to like email marketing and content and engaging people, it's kind of like what these guys were saying, but if adding my tone to it is, I like to put it in the perspective of Have you ever had a conversation with someone who just talks about themselves? And you try to chime in and be like, oh yeah, I've been there. And they're like, so cool. More about me. Like it's not like a banter. It's not like a give and take. They're just like, so anyway, let me tell you how awesome I am. That's what you're doing if you only send out emails or if you only post content when you have something to say about you. So what all of these guys are saying is, what value can you provide to them? So when you flip the script and completely change the perspective about what's in it for them, not what's in it for you, be a giver, not a taker, and that's going to completely transform how you view content. Strategically, now that was like an emotional, like I'll get off my my podium now, but like in terms of like strategically speaking for both email and social content. When I'm working with clients with my consulting business, people, they often get like intimidated and they don't know what to say. And there's all of these struggles. I always tell them two things. So guys, like write this down. This is a nugget. And guys and other heroes, feel free to like chime in and say what you do. But this is what I always tell my clients. The order should be when you, I wrote this down so I didn't mess it up. So when you capture someone with the lead magnet, right? So you're posting on social media because you want to give them value. It's not about what you do. It's about them. Hey, I want to help you. You capture them, you email them to deliver the thing, then over deliver. They'll be like, oh, if you watch this, here's how you get even more. So like just completely wow their pants off, then indoctrinate them. So like, and that's like this small window where you can talk about your why and your purpose, but frame it from why that's important to them. So like invite them to share their story too. And then after that, then you add them to your long-term nurture where you have this dance of email and social content. And my point being is that when people are intimidated, like I don't know what to post, I don't know what to share. One tip I would like to offer in terms of content you can give people that's valuable is like continue after you finish the indoctrination and you're sharing valuable content with them on a regular basis, continue to tell your story because you as a brand are evolving and changing too. And people want to feel like they're on that journey, like they're a part of that story. So like if you have a new product coming out, don't wait until the, hey, buy it or get on the waiting list to buy it phase. Like tell them like, guys, I'm, what do you think about this and this? And like, let them vote and have a say and get them excited about it. And then send an email out to your nurture list with a link to that post where they can vote. And then you get the clicks. So you see, you have this dance of give and take on your email and social. So keep telling that story and like, let them feel like they have ownership instead of just waiting till you have something to get from them. It's not about you. It's about them.
So I think we can end here. Always awesome. So George, I know this is a hard one, but you're gonna have to follow up with Jade. I'd asked you to bring together ideas about repurposing the content, but it's always tough to follow Jade. But I know you can do it. So when the question really is kind of looking back at the January, February, and how do we not do this again? But also in the summertime when we get busy and we get these downtimes. What's some strategies that you have around repurposing content?
Yeah, well, the thing you got to remember is you've got content readily available to you, whether you realize it or not. So you probably have ideas coming out the wazoo. It's just a matter of figuring out a way to make it something you can send out and repurpose. But think about things like this. What are the posts that are most successful on your site? And repackage that. And I know we're going to talk something about AI, but AI is a really good way to take a good article and either cut it up and then throw it through one of those systems or have it rewrite it. And I've been playing around with that, and it's impressive how different and how similar to what you were originally trying to say it can be. Yep. So that's definitely something you want to do. The other thing is it could be kind of dayish in the life. Jade was talking about, make it about them, not about you. But if you come up and you start talking about, I was talking to my winemaker, and he was doing this. The buds are going to be coming on the plants in a couple weeks. And what's the story? Keep it simple, fresh. Be a great opportunity for you to get your phone and just go out into, the vineyard. And hey, right about here in a month, you're going to see this. So it's just something that's so almost no duh. But to someone who's not out in a vineyard all the time, it's unique. The other thing too is I just happen to start an herb garden, and I've got this basil that the bugs love the heck out of. And you're a farmer, right? Someone who knows about, so can you give some tips to the guy at home about growing flowers or growing, down here it's tropical, so we have orchids, but give tips about things that maybe are just kind of related to wine so that you become a resource to them.
I think that's a fantastic idea, is sharing some of that additional knowledge. And the other part here, I think, we do this in the marketing space. Hold on, here we are. We do this in the marketing space a lot, is that we just assume that people understand some of the basic fundamentals. And if you're new into the role or into marketing or digital marketing and trying to pull all this together, the dais that we have here today, we all just kind of like, we've been doing that for years. And it's like, what? I don't understand. So I think from a farmer perspective is, we just take it for granted that we understand how the vines grow and what happens and all those kind of things. But it's George, that's a great idea to be able to bring that forward. And then the other part of it, for those of you wineries, I know there's many that actually do have herb gardens and and small veggie gardens. What are you doing, and what's happening in your garden? Mary, how's your garden grow, kind of thing. And so that might be some really interesting ideas. Bring in the gardener. Janet is the gardener here at this winery, and maybe let's bring her in. She's fun and bubbly and loves the plants, and we could have a Janet Grows conversation, and that's another topic thread that goes around some of this.
Even think of something like, what do they do with all the stuff they cut? Because right about now they're probably trimming last year's old branches and stuff. Is that turned into fertilizer? Is it sustainable? Stuff like that. So now you're going into another subject space that might be of interest to someone different. And those people might be wine drinkers.
Absolutely. And Sharon, last final word. You had something, because one of the things that we always hear is you can't copy other content. You can't copy and repurpose. Well, what's Google? What do you say? What say you, Google, about repurposing content?
Google has no problem with you repurposing content.
Fantastic.
So
there we go.
They just, all they want is that you continue to revalidate to them that you know what you're talking about, you're educating people, you're educating the right people. And if you've got a good piece of content out there and you put on your Google Business Profile panel, you go out and you look at it and it's gotten 22 interactions to it, you darn well better be repurposing that.
Yeah, perfect.
And you don't even have to change a thing about it. They don't even care. You can post the same thing up every single week. I wouldn't recommend that because, but if you want to put a circuit out there, you got 10 different types of wine and you just repurpose the same thing over and over and over, I would advise you to change your graphic at least. But if the content's resonating with people, don't change what's not broken.
Excellent.
Okay, perfect. We all love to have the problem that people are saying, hey, you posted the same thing 3 times in the last 6 months.
Yeah, if they're that worried about it, that's great.
That's fantastic.
And when it comes to repurposing, you can do the same with your email. So like Jade was talking about your long-term nurture campaigns, realistically, you can write those so that they are evergreen. So you create that content once and you put that into your automation, and your contacts, they just circle through that. And so with clients that I work with one-on-one, we build out a 52-week, actually it's 60 emails because some months have 5 weeks. And so we build that out, and it's evergreen content. I don't remember the emails I got yesterday, let alone a year ago. So as long as you are providing that value, and like was just mentioned before, if you look at your metrics, like you should be doing in everything in your business, you see which emails are really getting that traction, a lot of opens, a lot of engagement. and you could swap out content that's not performing as well, but you don't have to rewrite and reinvent the whole wheel with that.
And so I just had a thought there, and Paul, go ahead.
My
Yeah.
arm's about to blow off. I know that
Yes.
I'm automation guy, but I've been doing this thing for years. And can I show like what it actually would look like, what Scott's talking about? Maybe not 52 emails, but can I show like
100%.
how this could look? All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen because I do this, but it's a little different. Basically, if you're active in the sales process, but you're not quite ready to like talk yet, but you're also not a total, dud. Like imagine if you were doing like a bulk order or something, like, bunch of cases for something, but let's talk in 6 months because budgeting reasons, right? Let me share my screen.
Yeah,
And
something
so
like that would be really good for licensing, licensee sales and
Oh,
corporate
yeah.
sales,
Mhm.
and or weddings, corporate events, or those kind of things. Absolutely.
Yes. So I've got there's some things. They come into long-term nurture, they go out, and this thing runs. This is 2023 because once a year I come in here and rewrite these emails, and like you said, Scott, I look at what's getting engagement, are we getting opens, this kind of stuff. But basically, it's 9 emails over the course of internationally recognized holidays. Play around with daylight savings time. But the magic here, well, so first of all, this is what the model would look like. And then there's a habit to spend like 30 minutes once a year to like adjust the first part of the email and subject line. Or if the email is good, just don't touch it. Just, do that. That would be the model. And then the content, I call it a classic nurture because licensing or stuff like that. None of these emails, by the way, follow my mom on LinkedIn, by the way. None of these emails have any links or nothing in them. It's just, hey, what's going on. Because, hey, look at April Fool's AI thing. But the point is, as soon as you're ready to talk about buying a case or do a wedding or whatnot, this would stop. Or if it's the example of you're doing events, great. If they're engaged in an event conversation, that stops. And then when either it's a one sale or lost, then add them back to that series. And then you just keep showing up. So I think that dovetails nice with what you were saying, Sharon, about reusing and repopulating stuff. I mean, Scott, about making sure we're in front of these people, because now it basically guarantees that I could not do anything. People are going to hear from me at least 9 times in the course of a year. It's better than nothing. And people love those emails too. I get lots of good replies to it. And then, sometimes it takes a few years for a lead to bubble up, and that's fine because licensing's like that. It can take a long time. So just
Jade, your fingers, I saw your fingers go and twiddle. Thanks. And Paul, thanks for sharing for that. For those of you who aren't familiar, what we were just looking at is Keep, formerly known as Infusionsoft. And it's, if you want to be leveling up your marketing automation, yes, I know a lot of people are with Klaviyo and MailChimp, but this is at our level for the wineries, anybody under 10 million in sales, you want to be doing this like crazy, that's a platform you need to be on. But that's a whole other conversation. Jade, you had your hand up. What's going on?
Yeah, that you make a good point, Mark. I apologize for like us nerding out on the terminology. So like, I'm like, yeah, everyone knows know, like, trust, or I don't know if that's like a marketing thing or a business owner thing or whatever, but I guess that's just a traditional attraction factor, right? Is you want people to know, like, trust you. And then I was saying capture. That's like when I say capture, I mean, you're going to post like, hey, I have something to give you as your content, and they have to give up their name and email. That's what I mean by capture. And then when they give up their name and email, they go into your system, your MailChimp, your Klaviyo, your Keep, what have you. And once you own that email address, and what Scott's saying is if you don't continue to email them and they're opening and clicking on a regular basis, that contact is going to decay and turn into a liability instead of an asset. So what I wanted to add, though, is that, like, it's funny how the conversation is, it's this like delicate balance between like technology and AI and, all this like nerdy stuff, and then the human element, right? And I really think that having the balance of the human element is really what's going to make you stand out between your competitors.
Yeah.
It's like Maya Angelou said, everyone's favorite quote: people will never remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. So combining the power of the human element with the technology, using all of these heroes' expertise. One thing, guys, I finally caved. I used ChatGPT for the first time yesterday. and here's what I did. We went hardcore into the avatar last time, right? And we were all just like nerding out on that. And one thing I pointed out is that's important to do message mining. So don't guess what you want to put on your sales page. Literally talk to your perfect customer and ask them what their problems and desires are and put their exact words on your sales page, right? So I went to ChatGPT instead of Google. Sorry, Sharon. And I asked ChatGPT, like, what are some statistics that Avatar A wants to hear about? And it told me. And I said, what are things that, Avatar B worries about in the longevity of their business? And it gave me terminology and things. I mean, and even, how like, if you haven't used ChatGPT, it will like bullet out a long list of your answers, and then it will say overall, and then kind of like sum it up. Every little bullet point could be like 14 social media posts and emails. I mean, like you can extrapolate, like, because you're gone are the days of long newsletters. Nobody's going to open up your newsletter with beautiful images and formatting. It won't even land in their inbox for one. And Scott's like, but like just two to 5 sentences, make your point, link to the call to action to learn more, because they want to trust you, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's an interesting segue into it. That's an interesting segue into it, because I wanted to. This is what I've been playing with a mutual friend of a few of us here is with Jeff, and what we've been playing around with is the idea of creating Chat GPT, but programming up specific personas. And so the persona is, and it's we can do this a couple different ways. So I'll position it 2 ways, and then I want to open it up to the feedback from the roundtable. So persona number one is from the winery specific. So let's say you have 3 people that you want to speak from the winery on a regular basis. So let's say the owner, let's say the retail manager, or somebody in the DTC side of the space, and then maybe the winemaker. But they're not available all the time, or they're not writers, they're busy. So what you can do is you can actually design and program up and I'll air quote it, train ChatGPT to be able to have the same kind of decision making in how they write, the same voice, the same kind of cadence. And so I didn't believe it. I'll be honest with you. I was like, no way, this doesn't work. I went through and did that and followed along, and Jeff and I worked through that. It writes exactly the way that the owner of this winery, because we do a lot of guinea pigging here, it writes exactly the same way that John does, down to his structure and how he writes paragraphs, certain phraseology that he uses. I was like dumbfounded. So then I said, okay, well, let's do the same thing in terms of a different persona. Let's go and look at it from Eddie, and Eddie's the ops manager. He's one of the other voices here, and we did the same thing. And lo and behold, it started writing exactly the way the emails that I get from him. And what I mean by exactly the same way is John creates his emails with lots of space, bullet form. He's ex-Deloitte accountant, consultant guy, so he's very concise to the point. Eddie's old school. He's on the floor. He's a retail guy. He's a people guy. He's not a computer guy. So his emails are like really condensed, and they just kind of run on and all that stuff. And it matched his style to a T. And so then we said, okay, well, that's all great, but what about who we need to write to, the avatar? And Jade, you're 100% right. Is it's all about communicating to the avatar, and how do we do that? So I said, okay, well, let's program in the person of that avatar and give them a persona. And so very quickly, I was able to create 2 personas. And so the fun part is I said, okay, I said to the one, prompted the one avatar from John to write an email out about an upcoming event, and then I took that copy and I put it inside the avatar persona and said, please rewrite this email in the context of the persona of the avatar, and it was brilliant. So just by saying, okay, so that's all great. How does it actually work? So the email went out to 923 people. We had a 92% open rate and a 65% click-through rate. So applause. Woo! So what I'm saying is that everything I'm seeing is this is some powerful doo-doo. And I think the key component is the training and understanding the personas and avatars and all that stuff. So there's gonna be more on that to come. But Paul is our resident data scientist, expert extraordinaire on the stuff behind it. What say you on this?
Well, so first of all, I want to lay like a super basic groundwork that when we as like marketing business types talk about AI or machine learning, it's all pattern recognition. At the end of the day, it's pattern recognition, and then there's only two types of pattern recognition. Either we know what we're looking for, or we're just clustering data together and trying to find insights. So as far as ChatGPT, it's a really awesome predictive model for natural language processing, or NLP, not the neurolinguistic stuff we play around with, but like the processing of language. So as a research tool, you nailed it by taking existing content and throwing it in there and rewriting this. Or I've done that with a couple of social media posts where I'll say, hey, how would you rewrite this post to make it a little more shareable or a little more engaging? And then I paste it saying, and then it spits out something that sounds better than that I could have written. As far as pattern recognition, machine learning, though, it's garbage in, garbage out. So it's only going to be as good as what you give it. And so if you put in like a weak strategy or a weak piece of copy, it's only going to be able to do so much. And then this is where we get into the science of asking the right questions, because we can say, write this post to be really emotional, write this post to be sad, write this post to be happy. In fact, I read somewhere where someone's like, explain rain to me at a 200 IQ, and it explained that vapor pressure, air, it condenses, it rains. And then it's like, explain rain to me like I have a 50 IQ. And it was this broken English of like the sky gets sad and then it cry, that why it rained. Like, you got to know who you're talking to. So I think if you're clear on who your avatar is, it's great for helping you like rewrite and polish stuff up. Or it's really good for research, but it's still only going to be as good as what the human puts into it. And then the magic is going to be like, okay, how do you prompt it? What kinds of questions? That kind of nerdy stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's that's a really good summary and about kind of the overall process, because that's exactly what I found when I first tried it 2 months ago. I was like, okay, this is lame. Like it just didn't make sense to me. And then once I went through and started understanding and I think you really nailed it, is how do we program it? What prompts do we give it to really learn and grow? And then the other part of it too is we can actually, it's funny how did I phrase it? I was talking to Katie about it yesterday. I didn't realize that I needed to separate out different personas into different chats. And so I turned it stupid. Like it literally was, I was having like, okay, over here, I'm having wine conversations. Then I was showing my 13-year-old daughter how to do it. So I was like, hey, what really cool things could you make for your YouTube channel about, ghost stories and all that stuff? And then I don't know, I was playing with something else. And then I was like, oh, I need to write this blog post. And so I went to go write a post, and it was like, So March is not it's St. Patrick's Day, so don't be scared of the little green gnomes, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, where the hell is he getting? And then I realized that I had conversations with the program about ghost stories and haunted houses, and it took the little leprechaun and turned it into a ghost. And so yeah, it's quite an interesting conversation. Now, Sharon, when we talk about AI, we're talking about lots of different types of AI. So the best way I've been able to see it kind of described is AI is showing up in like 4 main categories. One is in the copy development or writing, and that I'll bulk into that researchy type stuff. So the Chat GPTs, the copy AIs, the Jaspers, those things, that's kind of where that falls into it. Then there's the image side of it. So you can text to image, which is wicked freaky and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the algorithmic AI. So you mentioned Google's AI, and we're not talking the same Chat GPT into Bing. We're talking about the underlying information that they use to crawl websites and so on. So, how would you distinguish the two from a Google perspective?
I think that's one of the biggest things to understand when it comes to Google's algorithm. Number one, it's always changing. But I think the biggest thing is to understand that, Google's constantly watching what's happening out there, not just for your business directly, but as an industry as a whole. And so a lot of times when Google's looking for something within an algorithm and they're looking for an emotion or they're looking for an image or they're looking for a feeling or content around something, they're comparing you to your competition.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people don't really think about that. And that sometimes, you have to go out and see what your competition is doing when it comes to also understanding, the algorithm and how it's working. If you can reverse engineer how you think that your ideal client is searching for you, and you start opening stuff that your competition is doing, and they're ranking high for that for that content, or someone, another winery within, might be within North America as a whole, but they're ranking really high. It's a good way for you to understand that this is what Google's algorithm believes is the most important and influential information out there on this type of a subject matter. So I think that's one of the things that, I don't know if that's 100% what you're getting at, but I mean, that's literally how AI works. I mean, Google's scanning everything for knowledge, and then they're looking to see who's getting the most attention. And with that, who do they think has the most pertinent information that's really educating somebody around a subject matter? What is Merlot? How do I want to, what's the difference between different types of Merlot? That type of stuff. If you look out there and you start asking questions in Google search, Google's AI is going to give you information. It's going to give you some great algorithms, to put content out there. But you also have to look at the back of your own website and see how things are coming through to your website, because there may be things that you are missing, that Google's not seeing because the back end of your website is not coded properly to get the right information through. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors, with AI as a whole, but the way that Google's AI is working, they're looking at how algorithms as a whole are coming through subject matters, what they think is a subject matter expert in an area. And you've got to take some time to just research your own products and see what's really searching well out there. Because if you don't, you're going to miss something. I mean, Google basically is not rocket science. They hand it to you on a silver platter, but you gotta research it.
Yes.
So that you're talking the right way, so the algorithm's going to bring it through to your business instead of your competition.
And so I mean, what I'm hearing there from that perspective is that so let's just break this down from a couple points here. So AI as a whole, artificial intelligence, Paul, I mean, you really kind of broke it right down, which is machine learning, and it's looking for patterns, it's looking for pattern recognition, and algorithms, which are basically programs, are created to search for those things. AI, that's all hyped up in the marketing world right now, that's artificial intelligence, which is simply a programmatic tool to use natural language programming, NLP, you probably heard, to draft and write or create tools. But what Sharon's talking about is the algorithms that are required for search and pulling that together. That's also what you need to understand, is that's your key to success, is being able to go through and learn when I search up Malbec, or when I didn't pronounce it right, or when I search up Riesling, or I search up Pinot Grigio, who's coming up, but more importantly, why are they coming up, right? And that's the why is the silver platter. And so then how do you take your spin on it? And this is where the copy side of AI can come in. You can take that article, run it through, and say, write it in my winemaker's voice, and then take that and then write it for a 35-year-old, 35 to 45-year-old married couple, right? And use that for parties. That's kind of how you could do those things.
I want to put
Yeah,
a
and I
cherry on
have-
top of that. Oh,
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
so I have one more thing to add too. I don't know
Yeah,
who wants to
please.
go first.
Go
Okay.
ahead, go ahead,
So
Sharon.
the
I
other
know
thing,
you have to jump off, right?
actually, I think I'm good for a little bit here yet. But
Okay, cool.
the one thing too is and this might be where Paul's going. I have no idea. But when you talk about images, like the first week that, on my masterclass, the whole thing we talk about is images. And like one of the things that a lot of people miss, and I see this in wineries that we work with, is, the label that you create to put on that bottle of wine becomes an image that becomes searchable.
Yeah.
And so every product image needs to be put on Google and coded in Google so that your business name is searching for everything that you do in every way. And that one of the biggest things I think a lot of people miss is understanding that their images, they need to be putting their business name, the type of wine it is, the label, and that needs to go out there under images in your Google Business Profile panel and on your website and throughout all your social media, because you want to be able to search. And one of the homework assignments for week one of my master classes, they have to go out and search Google Images for their business name and tell me how many times they find their images in the first scrolling bar.
Ooh, that's a fun. Paul and I just went, ooh,
Good
that's
one.
good.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
that's
so
a good little
that's one
nugget
of
there.
yeah. So if you take my master class, just know that's part of your homework in week one.
We'll be getting that up on the
And
site
Mark,
pretty
it's
soon.
you have it
Yeah.
on your inbox right now.
It's on my task list to do this week. So now, Paul, you had something you want to talk about?
I did, which was actually nothing about what you said, Sharon. What you said is going to make my idea sound way dumber, which is okay. I like to keep it simple. You were talking about how, if I search for Riesling or Malbec, or like, why are they doing it, and how there's the different avatars, right? I'm always reminded about how at the end of the day, the place like McDonald's is selling hamburgers, but the way they sell it to an adult is completely different than they sell it to a kid. And you got to take that into consideration. You can't have one commercial that's just going to ship hamburgers that's also going to ship it for kids. It's just not how it's going to work. So, and then I think Sharon would probably agree that if you were to have a blog post, but maybe one that's written to each avatar, but structurally, you're using the proper keywords and stuff, Google would like that. They would like to see that, yes, you are an expert in Malbecs, because I can talk to it as a middle-aged mom, as a college kid, or as a retiree. So anyway,
Absolutely.
avatars are important. Nobody has one.
Scott, I know that to bring you up here to this conversation around the AI, I know you've been doing some research in terms of how to use it when it comes to content writing for emails and such. And so where are you starting to see the direction? Because I mean, while AI is 10 years old, maybe even 15, 20 years old from the machine learning perspective, it's only been capable to be in our hands as marketers for the last 2 years or so in any kind of productive mass. So where are you seeing it kind of driving forward in the email space?
Yeah, so I think, kind of, something that we touched upon a little bit earlier is, helping you come up with ideas, helping you do the research, right? AI is amazing in, just coming up with, if you're going to do an evergreen email campaign, what are
Can I pause you? Can I pause you there for a second?
Yep.
Jade did this earlier, so I'm going to ask you, can you define evergreen when you say evergreen campaign? Some people may not know.
Yeah. So evergreen really is you write it once and you just use it over and over again. So you only have to create that content one time and you can repurpose it as many times and in as many places as you want to as well. So that's what I mean by evergreen. But you can use AI to help you come up with content ideas. You can ask it for a particular topic. You can ask, what's this avatar interested in? Now, one of the things that I think Paul kind of touched upon as well is it's when you're using AI, you have to make sure that you're feeding it good information, good questions in order to get the best responses. And, these are things that I've kind of been learning, how to use AI, what's the best, phrases and instructions to give it so that it can give me the better responses. And one thing that, a lot of times we want to dump everything into AI. So, like we just want to give it maybe it's a few sentences, maybe it's a really lengthy paragraph. We try to give it everything. But one of the things with Chat GPT is that if you give it too much, it doesn't give you anything substantive that you can use. Right. So you want to have it, give it small bites of instruction and then let it give you a response, and then you can instruct it how you want it to proceed from there. How do you want it to tweak? How do you want it to, to rewrite something or to word it differently? Some of the best, as I've kind of been playing around with it, some of the best things that I've been able to do is, really have it give me an initial response. And then I will say, make this 3 times more conversational.
Yeah.
And then it will take it and give you a totally, different output as well. So, there's a lot. I mean, like we could literally do an entire training on, using AI, but what it all boils down to is what are the prompts that you're giving it so that you can actually, get the best results from it. Because like Paul said, garbage in, garbage out. And as with all AI, you want to make sure that, especially if you're kind of getting into some of the technical type of things and, things like that, you want to make sure that it's actually giving you right information, because AI can be wrong. So
absolutely. You have to check everything.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think, more to come on this. Yes, there will be some training on this. Yes, there will be some further discussion, and there's a couple of people that I'm going to be bringing in to have these discussions. And so because it is both, it's a now conversation, but it's also, I think it's a transformative conversation if applied correctly, and it achieves 3 things, I think, from everybody that I've been talking to at the wine level. Hold on, I need to do this. Keep on forgetting to do that there. It achieves 3 things that people are struggling with at the wineries. One is what do I write about? How do I come up with all this stuff? The second thing is I don't have time to write 52 blog articles and create the 700 posts that I need for social media and blah 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 blah. And I need to email everyone once a week, and then I've got if they're buying a product, I have to take them to the nurture camp. It could be for a year, and not to overwhelm you, but it is not inconceivable to have an email every week for nurture, to have a welcome campaign, to have a thank you follow-up campaign, to have social media activity, both on Insta and Facebook, and potentially YouTube and Twitter, and TikTok. Then you've got your ads activities and all that stuff. Oh my God, where do I start, right? And by the way, I've got to run onto the floor, and I've got to go help this, and I got to go do with this wedding, and so-and-so called in sick, so I'm now the manager on duty today, and so where I think AI can fit into a lot of that is to help you generate some of this content, because I want to reiterate, and if it hasn't been clear yet, I really want to drive home 3 key points here. Number 1, if you don't have your email working properly, and that's one of the primary sales channels that you have, no matter of content is going to work. But once you get it dialed in, you got to keep it going. And that then spins off into social media. You've got to stay there. You got to stay present. And then in the Google world, you've got to be posting on a regular basis, not because oh, I want to be, kind of omnipresent is the word. It's because that's what the algorithms are telling us to do. And when you go through the email audit review, one of the one of the screens is a whole thing about know the rules, and we don't write the rules, folks. We have to play the game that the rules are in. So, so we'll bring more about these conversations. And I want to reiterate something that Jade and I spoke about the other day is how a lot of these conversations are interweaving. Email, blog posts, social media, Google posts. How is all this stuff intertwined together? And it's just not one element, right? Yeah, Paul, you were going to say? Or you just give me an amen, brother.
Well, that too, but that's what I believe the business stack does, which I'm sure I've spoken about, but it's this idea where the consumer receives your offer. So in this case, wine, it's received through the journey of marketing, sales, or fulfillment. And then the operations is how do you market? How do you sell? How do you fulfill? And when we have these distinctions in our head, and of course there's people and money distinctions, but for this conversation, when we have the distinction of like, okay, usually a website is an operational asset because it's used for the marketing, sales, and fulfillment.
Right.
Looking at something like Facebook, typically a marketing asset, sometimes a sales asset, and though there's the operations of how do we do it, like all the checklists, like how do we manage the community, how do we respond to messages. So this customer journey, when you're clear that I'm trying to create this story or whatever the message is, it should be easier to then look at the tools operationally to say, okay, well, if we want to talk about this, we could do an email here, and then we could make these kinds of posts. And because if you're jumping up and down from like the offer to the customer journey and then having a conversation about email, but then over here about social, and then you're like, wait, what wine are we selling? Like, it gets very easy to get turned around and get lost. So just by having the really clear distinctions, hopefully it provides some organization of chaos.
That's organizing the chaos. Like right now for March, we've got a product launch. We've got overall campaign. That's a 4-month long campaign. We've got 3 now as of last night, 2 more concerts that are coming to the winery. We've got new staff notifications, and we have a change in some of our tasting experiences in the tasting room. So how do you manage all of? I mean, that's what 5 or 6 different conversations that are happening to different audiences, and now wedding season's coming up, so we have to throw in the whole wedding season conversation. And we're starting to get literally just before we went live, there was some people walking in evaluating the space about corporate events, and so lots of different marketing conversations that are happening. So how do you keep track of all of that is another thing that we're going to be diving into, and I'm going to work with each of you all to bring this forward because I think there's some good knowledge that we can bring here. Okay, I want to change topic right now, and I did it again. I'm talking, but Paul's face is on. You need to start moving your mouth as I'm talking. That'd be really funny. So what I want to do now is I want to turn the table to what can we do this month to really move these things forward. And I'm going to start, Jade, with you. So in the area of community, we have your new free program that's available. And again, part of everything that we're doing here is we want to make sure that this is accessible. We want you to have the access to the information so that you can make informed decisions, you can hold partners accountable, and you can level up so that you can become the hero within your winery. And one of the areas that we're going to help you do that is through Jade's stuff. So Jade, can you give us kind of a quick synopsis of what your free program looks like and what that's about?
Yeah. And I was going to say, don't forget to put me up here. Otherwise you can just flap your lips while I'm talking. So a little sneak peek. What it is it's a very powerful framework on how to design an effective community, because the problem with pretty much everything in marketing, whether it's like email, Google, like all of this stuff, and especially communities, it's trendy. Right? Like people will like, oh, I need to do this. So they'll do this. And then, oh, I need to have a social media channel. So they'll create one and post like 3 things and then won't do it forever. And like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. And
Right.
community is no exception. Communities are very trendy, especially with COVID, right? Because people were, flocking to these online containers to find connection, and so in the small business world, people started, creating these communities, and I think what people don't realize, and here's another gem, y'all, write this down: community is not an objective; it's a format.
Powerful.
I can watch. I literally just watched all of you like. I just might like. Don't just have it for community's sake. Community, so think of it this way. Like, if the question is, should you even have one? The way you answer that question is to ask, what value can I provide that's appropriate for them to be talking to each other more than talking to me?
Right.
So, and I think there's so many opportunities in the wine world, because wine is an experience. Unless I'm like a drunk chugging a bottle on my couch alone in the dark, which I will neither confirm nor deny. But I think I literally said this in the video, guys. It's like, when you can access this free content, I said this out loud. When I die, I'm not going to remember that one sale you had where I got like a half price bottle of wine. When I die, I'm going to remember that amazing trip I had and sat next to my friends and met this new person and got to like experience the flavor of something I never would have tried if my friend didn't invite me, and the experience that I had.
Yeah.
So that's an example of something that is actually a lot better, that the value is better because they're together, not because you're just telling them something.
Right.
So what can you do with a container of an experience?
And what I'm really excited about here, Jade, is here, let's do it this way. What I'm really excited about is how, I've been looking at and working in Facebook communities and all that stuff, and what I'll call Facebook communities, which really isn't a community. Your approach to this is very transformative to the overall operational activities of the business. We, in our conversations that we've had in preparation for this, I keep on bringing those conversations back down to the leadership at the various wineries I'm consulting with now. And we're implementing, even without knowing what you're talking about, just from our tertiary conversations, and we're seeing transformation in the experience of the members at the winery. And so now what's happening is a lot of the discussions are being framed, not by me, but other people on the team, about, okay, well, how does that impact that community? What are we doing to be of service to that community? And I'm like, that's really cool. Like, and I haven't even taken the course yet, right? So,
Yeah.
so I'm really excited about where this is going to go.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for putting that together, and I think it's going to provide a lot of value to everybody. Now, just to let you know, and I don't want, this isn't going to be a big sales pitch, but the 1, 2, 3 of us, or four of us that are left on the screen right now, Scott and I have been putting together a email audit review. So basically that goes through your whole audit. Paul and I have been working on a mega program, which we're in the process of recording right now. And and that's really in the area of understanding meta, how the architecture and the structure of everything works. So I think that's going to be transformative as we move forward with the year in your team. So that's exciting. And then Sharon and I are putting together some stuff on really just understanding Google Business Profile and understanding where does Google fit in a lot of the misconceptions within Google, and understanding where it sits and how that all comes together. So watch for more of that, because again, our mission here is really to help you become successful and ultimately be that you are the hero within your winery. And so with that said, let's talk about accountability and action steps in the last 15 minutes here or so. Let's go to Sharon. Sharon, what, and I think you already did it, but what's the one thing that you would recommend for everyone listening and watching? You're not Sharon, hold on. You're Sharon, there we go. Sharon, what would you recommend is the one thing to work on this month? And maybe it's in line with the images. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I would search your business name in two ways. First, just search it regularly on Google Chrome. And I would count, number one, first I would count how many times your business name shows up in that list on that page. Go to the next page if you need to, before you see one of your competitors. And don't count Google Ads. So what you're looking for is how many times you're showing up before a competitor's name shows up. And then go into an incognito screen. So if you don't know what that is, there's three little dots up on the right-hand side of your search bar. When you click on that, you can pick incognito. And what it does is it makes the computer not understand or remember anything that you've ever done on it before. And search your business name that way too. And then do the exact same thing. See how many times you can count that you show up in the listings. And then at the top of the page in each, there's a button that says images. Click on that and see again how many times your images shows up just on that first screen. Don't worry about scrolling at all for images. Just see how many times you show up and take a note. Not just what shows up, but is it coming from your Facebook account? Is it coming from your website? Is it coming off your Google Business Profile panel? Is it my logo? Is it the label off of my wines? I mean, and just kind of make a little note, because you're going to go back after you do some work over the next 30, 60, 90 days, and you're going to go through and do the same thing again. And you're going to see how much of an impact you've been able to make.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real critical action step there, because the stuff like Sharon said, the stuff that we're going to be talking about, especially on the Google Heroes side of the channel, is really going to be giving you some of the tools in that, and then some of the training, some of the complimentary free training that we're doing will help you with that. So use that as a benchmark. So I think that's one of the things you need to do. Scott, you're next on my list here. So what's the action step for March that you recommend that people work on this month?
Yeah, so I think, kind of going back to our conversation, at the beginning of the call, is if you haven't been emailing your list on a regular basis, start ramping that back up and create a plan to consistently communicate with your list ongoing, even during the slow times.
And so Scott, with that, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. I guess the word I was looking for. How do you? Because I want to make sure we don't overwhelm and start blasting. How do we handle that from an engagement perspective? If we're not tracking engagement, we don't have any visibility into that. What would you recommend? Do I send out to my 3,500, 5,000, 10,000 emails, or what do I do there to begin that conversation? Sorry, begin that process.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult if you don't know your numbers. So like the bottom line action step for everybody, if you don't know your numbers, the number one thing is know your numbers. You've got to get your email audit. So if you don't know those numbers, like, your action step is get your email audit so you can find out your email health score, who's engaging, who's not engaging, those types of things. If you do know your numbers, so if you're using MailChimp, because I know a lot of the wineries do use MailChimp, you can go in and look and see who's been engaging with emails the last time that you emailed them. And I would segment that list down and do it in small batches of people who last engaged with your email. Send a small batch of emails to those people first. And then you can kind of start ramping that up. And then as you do that, keep looking at those numbers, stay on top of those numbers, and then you can start consistently growing, the number of people that you're communicating with.
Okay, great. And Jade, and then it'll be Jade, then Paul. Okay. So let's pull up. Where did I go? Hold on, my mouse is all over the place. Jade, what do you recommend as an action step for the month?
Yeah. So I kind of went on a rant about don't do communities for trendy communities' sake. But you guys are probably very experienced wineries. You know what you're good at. You know the experiences you provide. So a goal to think about is identifying the communities that you might already have, like your tasting club, or the people that have had events at at your winery, for example. So identify them and then think about how you can enhance them. Like I said earlier, about if the goal is for them to experience it together instead of just looking at you, how can you what can you do to craft the experience around getting them to connect with each other without you being there. You're just the container. The community is the medium. It's not a show where you're standing there. Otherwise, it's not a community.
Excellent, excellent. And Paul, there's some text there, but can you talk about, from a meta perspective, what you'd recommend as far as the action step this month? Kind of in alignment with what we've been dealing with here at this winery.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, definitely make sure that if you haven't, it's springtime, spring cleaning, make sure all your accounts and all that jazz are tightened up. Like, that's something we're dealing with, Mark, right now, trying to figure out like where the stuff is. Do the same thing with Google too. Make sure you have all your proper access. And then as far as AI stuff, I mean, if anything, go look back at some of your most popular posts and pop it into a tool like ChatGPT and see if you can spin up a different version of it. See if see what people like, and just start getting familiar with. Just again, it's more of a research tool than actually doing it for you tool, in my opinion. So just start getting good at playing around with that.
Fantastic. Oh no, sorry, you gonna say something else?
Well, I'm just looking. You said please go to business.google, but see if you have Meta access. That's two different platforms, good sir. I don't know which one you're talking about.
Yes, I know. That was the Meta conversation, to make sure that you've got access to the Meta profile or Meta account, so the business account's been set up. I think you muted yourself.
Sweet.
There
That's
you
all I
are.
missed.
Cool. Okay. So so just to wrap it up here, I think, the key point here is that there's a lot of information that we're talking about. There's a lot of information that we're providing to you, and each month the overall goal is to inform you and show you and help you understand that there's more out there than possibly you are informed with or playing with, and the resources that we have here to help you gain that knowledge. So each month, every one of the heroes we have our own discussion for an hour. So recommend that you go check out the calendar and come join that. And as Jade and Sharon and Scott and Paul and George and myself, what we're doing is putting together some both free content, but also some valued training that you can bring to your winery, ultimately to help you succeed. So without further ado, I think if you have any questions, comments, or any of that kind of stuff, feel free to drop them in chat, or if you are in the member section, there's a form down below. So click on that, put your questions in there, and then we'll follow up and we'll bring them up. But for this month specifically, we've got several reviews that we're going to be doing. So we've got some Facebook ads we're going to look at. We've got some Google business profiles that we're going to be looking at and seeing just how off mark they are. Some emails that we're going to be looking at with Scott. Jade and I are going to be talking a little bit more about community, and then we're going to be talking about some more AI conversations and content development. So until then, we wish you all the best. Cheers to everyone, and thank you to all the heroes that are here. I'm just so grateful that you share your time and energy and your knowledge with the community. So yeah, thank you so much.